I did a video recently when I talked about UK demographics from the point of view of a Department for Education report on numbers of school children, state primary school children. What I want to talk about now is the implications of that on birth rates, births in this country. And I also want to talk about births in France and the ethnic origin of birth rates in France as well. Now, just to remind you, that Department for Education report, what that showed was that in 2006, the percentage of state primary school children, primary schools being aged 5 to 11, the percentage of state primary school children who were non-white British was 20%. And that 13 years later, in January 2019, that percentage had risen to 33.5%, so just over 1% growth a year. And that's a nice, neat straight line graph. If you extend that straight line out, you find that in another 16 years, the percentage of state primary school children who are non-white British will get over the 50% mark. And that's by January 2035, so about 14 and a half years from now. Now think about that. Now what I want to do now is to look at what is the implication for on births. Well, the middle age, the median age of primary school children is 8. So if primary school children are age 5 to 11, the middle year is age 8. So if you subtract 8 from 2035, you get 2027. At 2027, the implication is that 50% of births in the UK, or more than 50% of births, will be non-white British. That's 6.5 years away. Now, there are a few mitigating factors. It's possible that non-state primary schools, there aren't very many of those, it's a tiny percentage. It's possible that they are a little bit more white than state primary schools. Also, 8.1% of the 33.5% were white non-British, Poles, Russians, Romanians. I don't think that makes a lot of difference because it's not about colour, it is about ethnicity, which includes the factor of race. We, the English, are entitled to our own homeland in England. I like Polish people. Polish people have their own homeland. It's called Poland. Incidentally, we went to war in 1939 in order to guarantee the Poles' right to have their own homeland in Poland. So I have no compunction about saying that England is the homeland of the English and not the Poles, and that the Poles are not English. Now, another mitigating factor is that non-white children tend to cluster around the lower age groups, so probably nearer age 5 than age 11. So maybe we need to push out the age where non-white school children make up more than 50%. Maybe we need to push that year out a little further, perhaps by a year to 2028 or 2 years to 2029, but certainly by the end of this decade. Now, I'll leave the link below, the link to that report, Schools, Pupils and Their Characteristics by Department for Education. And you can tell me, any stats guys, look at that report, put it in the comments, tell me where I'm going wrong, if I am. Now, France, I want to look at France. France doesn't gather ethnic data. We all know why, so we have to look at other methods. A very good method is looking at their testing for sickle cell syndrome. France tests all newborns who come from certain countries and have two parents from those countries for sickle cell syndrome. The countries that they test, or the children that they test, basically have to have two parents from the following countries. First of all, the French overseas departments, that's the West Indies, Guyana, Réunion and Mayotte. And all sub-Saharan African countries, the whole of sub-Saharan Africa and Cape Verde, Brazil, North American black people, India, the Indian Ocean, Madagascar, Mauritius and Comoros, North Africa, that's Algeria, Tunisia and Morocco, southern Italy, Greece and Turkey, and finally the Middle East, Lebanon, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Yemen and Oman. Now, if you have both parents coming from one of those countries or from those countries, you are eligible for screening. What that means is that President Obama, Barack Obama, would not have been eligible for screening because he had one white European parent, so he's not in danger of sickle cell syndrome. You can also get tested if you only know who one of your parents is, if you don't know the origin of the other parents, or if there is a history of sickle cell in your family. Now, the results of that testing, those were, I would say they're astonishing. What they show is that the newborns in France who were tested for sickle cell syndrome amounted in 2010 to 31.5% of all births. In 2012, 34.4% of all births. In 2013, 35.7%. In 2014, 37.2%, and in 2015, 38.85%. So 2015, 38.85% of all French newborns were basically either African or Muslim, but certainly non-white. Now think about that. But let's take it further. If you plot those numbers, that's another straight line graph. Nice, neat, straight line. Pretty, well, it's slightly curving upwards, but let's be conservative, take it as a straight line graph. The growth between 2005 and 2010 was 7.5%. So to get the 2020 figure, you add 7.5% to the 2015 figure. That gives you about 46.5%. Somewhere between 46 and 47% of all newborns in France were non-white, either African or Muslim or possibly Indian. And I think that is probably an underestimate because it doesn't include Pakistani, Afghan or Bangladeshi or Indonesian children. And we know there are Pakistanis in France because the Pakistan High Commission tells us there are 104,000 Pakistanis in France, and because we have pictures of Pakistanis in France. Here is a picture of Pakistanis in France showing a Frenchman in a laundrette just how well integrated into French culture they are when he asked them, could they wear a mask in the laundrette, please? Okay. Now that was in Paris, and in Paris the numbers are even worse. Really shocking in Paris. In 2005, the number of newborns tested for sickle cell syndrome was 54%. In 2010, it was 60%. 2015, it was 73.4%. So a rise of 13.4% between 2010 and 2015. If you add 13.4%, if you continue that straight line graph, but it's not a straight line graph, it's an upward curve, but be conservative, just treat it as a straight line, then you add 13.4% to the 2015 number, and that gives you 86.8%. So currently, this year in Paris, the newborns, about between 85 and 90% of newborns were either Muslim or black, basically non-white in Paris. Think about that. Now, if this continues much longer without repatriation, Paris is going to fall. Paris will go into chaos. The street demos, the street prayers, the disruption is going to grind Paris to a standstill. And I don't see any way that Paris will then be able to be retaken without war, without a lot of bloodshed. That has happened throughout history. You can lose Paris without losing France. You can't lose London without losing England. And it has often happened with Paris. You retreat, you recoup your armies, and then you go back and retake Paris street by street. That's probably what we're looking at if the situation doesn't break down before then, if we don't see wide-scale repatriations from France. France is probably headed for bloodbath. But the implications, the wider implications for all of us are three things. Firstly, we're way past the stage where repatriation can have any, where tinkering with immigration numbers can have any effect whatsoever. The numbers I'm talking about are the numbers I've been talking about here are the numbers who are already here. Tinkering with immigration numbers doesn't touch the numbers who are already here. It won't touch those numbers anyway, because every year we get a record number of immigration. 2019, we had a record number. The year before that was a record number. The year before that was a record number. 2019, the number of immigrants was 600,000 to the UK, 400,000 of those from outside Europe. And that number can't even be tinkered with, and it won't have any effect whatever to go on to bloviate on to expel a lot of hot air about the 10 or 15 a day arriving from Calais in rubber dinghies. That looks like misdirection to me. It may be controlled opposition, I don't know if it is. It looks like it to me, but it looks like misdirection. It looks like focusing outrage on something that is completely trivial, will have no effect on the problem, in order to distract people's attention from the real problems, which is based primarily the numbers who are here, but also the massive numbers of legal immigrants. Now, if I were the flag-wagging windbag Boris Johnson, I would be prepared to do a lot and to pay a lot of money to get that flag-wagging windbag Nigel Farage to go down to Dover and express outrage, make a lot of hot air about 10 or 15 people coming into Dover by rubber dinghy. Because if Nigel Farage is focusing people's attention on the trivia that's happening under the right hand, then people are not paying attention to the much, much bigger problem, at least more than 100 times greater, that is being hidden behind the left hand. And so it looks like misdirection to me. I don't know what Nigel Farage's motives are, but the effects are not good. Secondly, the second implication is that the civic nationalist position is irrelevant at best, collaborationist at worst. To go on about the Union Jack, flying the flag, singing Land of Hope and Glory, stamping your foot and shouting that we're all British, we should all feel proud to be British, doesn't matter who you are, and that we should celebrate British values and British culture. No, Muslim migrants, a lot of African migrants, are simply that they're not going to do that. They don't see themselves as individuals, they see themselves as a collective group with its own interests. We see that with the BLM protests, and simply to raise the flag higher up the flagpole and to insist on children being told more about British institutions in schools, that is simply hiding the problem. That is papering over the cracks. And those cracks are getting wider for civic nationalists. Most civic nationalists, if they are pushed in extremis, they will say, well, of course, Britain should remain majority white British, but it'll never come to that. Before that stage, I'll have got into power and I'll have changed things, so vote for me. No, they won't be elected. They've got no chance of getting elected before it comes to that. And they cannot paper over that crack with the Union Jack by pasting the Union Jack over it and then celebrating that. That will not work. It looks like collaborationism to me. It looks like the methods that were employed by those other collaborationists, the Vichy France regime, who had a lot of very patriotic propaganda, running the French flag up the flagpole, having lots of rallies and parades, and saying that collaborationism was the essence of French patriotism. Didn't work for them when the liberation came. Didn't work for them when the crunch came. No one was fooled by it. No one should be fooled by civic nationalist talk about the Union Jack today. The third thing is that the choice is simple, ugly, and blunt. We have to start thinking about how to achieve wide-scale, large-scale repatriation humanely, repatriating people to the lands of their origin. And it is not enough simply to say, well, yes, of course, I'm in favour of that. Yes, we will do it. You have to think through the methods and think through are they going to work? Why are they going to work? How can you be sure they're going to work? According to whom? Compared to what? At what price? At what cost? Can it be done without cruelty, bloodshed or terror? Can it be done without disabling our own society? How do you know that it will be effective? What is the historical evidence? All these questions have to be thought out. They have to be dealt with Is this possible? How do we do it? How do we deal with it humanely so that we maintain our moral authority for future generations? We need to do that now, whilst we have the time, whilst it is still relatively peaceful, because when things like this blow, they blow fast. And then what the ideas that people turn to are the ideas that people find lying around.